Hello everyone, I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money color commentator. On today's show, utilizing the banking system, part one in our series on It's Your Money, It's Your Life. Well, welcome to our first segment. We're talking about utilizing the banking system on your behalf. Most of us cannot live without some kind of a bank account. I mean, I know there's people out there in the virtual reality of online thinking, and their think tanks are there just out completely from banks. But remember, until we get into really universal kind of applications for banking, traditional banking and virtual banking is going to be the way to go. Now, when I'm looking at banking, I'm looking at banking that has FDIC. We want to have the Federal Deposit Insurance Company, and remember that corporation, FDIC Corporation, that actually watches over $250,000 in your account. Anything above that line, that may not be insured. But everything $250,000 down in one account or in a couple accounts in different banks, it's going to be protected. So you want to be able to think about strategizing. If you have more money than that, most Americans are going to be fine with just $250,000 in their account, $250,000 in their spouse's account. They're done, they're covered. But just keep in mind that one of the big aspects of federal deposit insurance is really huge, because if something went down with the bank, the government's going to step in and take over on that area and you'd be protected. Now, Banking 101. This is a huge issue, and I just want to really bring it up. Let's just see if we can center it a little bit more. We're talking about what banks offer. They offer accounts, they offer loans, and they offer credit. They offer savings accounts, checking accounts, and investing accounts. And in their investing accounts, some of them, not all, but some banks now offer mutual funds, and they all offer CDs, some form of RIAs, and money market accounts. But one of the things I want you to start thinking about every time you think about your bank are these four categories that you need to know. First one is interest. What interest am I earning on my money market or on my certificate of deposit? What interest am I paying on my bank car loan, my bank mortgage, my other equity lines of credit for my bank or for my home maybe? So interest, what am I paying? Second is fees. What does it cost me to engage with the bank? What kind of fees am I paying? What if I haven't overdrawn? Can I get overdrawn protection? I want to look at places where, what does it cost me? I'm trying to look at straight up checking accounts that cost me nothing. All I have to do is make sure I keep it funded and maybe even have a basic savings account behind the checking account in case I make a mistake with my math and I overdraft. Another one again is FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Company. I want to make sure, corporation, I want to make sure that I have the protection up to my $250,000 in my account. And then I want to know what the return is. What am I earning? Am I earning right now, I think a 1-year CD in most banks are right around 1.25 to 1.30. That's pretty much standard across the board. And again, if you want to check that out, just go to bankrate.com and they'll tell you what the current number is. Another thing I want to talk about a little bit here, and this is right from our book, It's Your Money, It's Your Financial Life. I want to talk about basic behavior. Now, when you think about this, finding a bank that meets your needs is going to be based on your behavior. So, can you answer a few questions for me so that we can come to a place of here's what we're doing, here's our daily life, here's what we do every month, and let's try to find a bank that matches up to that. So the first thing I want to do is, how many bills do you typically pay each month? And how often do you withdraw cash from an ATM? And I recommend that unless you really need cash, everything is pretty much chargeable. You should be using your credit card and maybe debit. I'll get into that in a second. You should be using that, never cash if you can get away with it. You lose track, your ATM becomes a money machine, and at the end of the month you wonder, where did I take this money out? You're at the checkout at the grocery store and they say, do you want cash? I always say, no. It takes a lot of discipline to do it. You only need cash here and there. Try to stay on cards. It gives you a record and you're always paying it off every month. If you're doing what I like to do is pay it off every month and get my bonus dollars. You want to be able to use your accounts and make it work for you. So how many bills do you pay? And then the second thing is, do you want to set up automatic payments from your account to those bills? So you could do your utility, you could do your mortgage, just as a few ideas. Or you could even have your Discover card, your MasterCard, maybe your Visa card all tied in there so it just pays it off every month automatic. But if you're like me, I kind of like to see it every month and make sure I'm paying the right amounts and so forth. I'm going to check on that, and I like to make sure I can see that. I try not to use my ATM. Number two, do you have enough cash available to make minimum balance requirements for no-cost interest-bearing checking? And I say that's a big deal. So if you can't find a virtual bank, a bank that doesn't charge, then you have to look to the next step up, which is, can I get an interest-bearing account where I have a certain minimum amount and I won't be charged for anything? Like in my bank, they took the composite of all my accounts and my wife's accounts, and we don't get charged for any of this. And I also have overdraft protection. So on my checking accounts and any savings accounts that I need for liquid money in the bank, which is basically what I use it for, that's all in there, and that's what I use it for. And then the third thing is, do you need a bank that's open nights and weekends? You have to start asking yourself, could I use a virtual bank, or do I have bank services that are open on the weekends? A lot of them are open now on a Saturday, maybe up till 2 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Some are open till 6, 8 o'clock, depends upon each bank's franchise. But you have to say, is that a need? Do I really need weekend banking? If you do, you got to make sure your bank's open either virtually or you can walk into the office. So that's the first thing I want to know is I need to get connected. I need to choose, should I do brick and mortar or should I be choosing a virtual bank? Now, when I'm looking at different credits that could be available in my financial life, once I go from banking, there's a secondary banking area I want to look at, and that is, what kind of credit can I use? What kind of earnings can I use? Basic accounts, interest-bearing accounts, credit union accounts, or regular accounts. Everybody's different, and depending upon what kind of institution you use, you're going to be able to get some interest that's going to be a little higher, like maybe at a credit union versus a traditional bank. So you want to weigh out the good and the bad. There's always going to be pros and cons for everybody and every institution, but you want to look at this and say, in my regular bank account, I have a basic bank account. Then I have a bank account that earns interest. I keep very little in my checking account. I only fund it at the beginning of the month to pay all my bills, and then I go forward and I pay everything on time, always on time, to keep your credit score high into the high 70s, maybe even if you can creep in like I do. Basically, I'm right around 804 on my FICO score. I want to look at which one's going to give me the best earnings with the least amount of fees, and do I have access that's really accessible? I can see all my accounts online. I can do virtual banking. I haven't done a physical deposit in a bank for almost 2 years now. I'm just photographing it right off my iPhone, and I'm pushing it right into the bank. It's great, it's a huge convenience, and it makes sense. So if you're into virtuality like I am, I like to use certain accounts, and if I was in a credit union, I would be if I could stand holding my money in a CD, usually they're a couple of notches above the normal bank. If I thought to myself, hey, I wanted more interest in that, then you're crossing over into the land of insurance companies that offer fixed annuity rates. And right now, if you compared a 5-year rate of an annuity rate would be about 3.25 versus traditional banks right now between 2.25 and 2.40. So that's where you're laying out, depending upon what you're trying to get done. Then, in the last section I want to talk about in this segment is, I want to talk about the saving route. Now, most of us are always looking at different ways that we can save. I try to save with my 401k automatically, have it pulled out of my account from my employer. They take that account, they take it automatically. I never see it. But for us who are self-employed, I may have to be a little bit more disciplined. So every time I get paid, I pay myself first. What I mean by that is I'm putting it into an interest-bearing account. Remember, my first thing out of the chute is any bank that I'm dealing with has to hold liquid money, especially my emergency account. We all have deductibles on housing. We have deductibles on our car. We have deductibles on our insurances. All those 3 things are going to come out of pocket if we have any one of those events take place in our life. So I have to have cash in my emergency fund. Usually I hold my emergency fund inside a bank. So I can get to it. There it is. It's tied to my checking account. If I have to use it, I can use it. So you want to be skillful. Then if I can go ahead and earn interest on it and keep a certain minimum balance, I'd like to do that as well. And if I can do that, some banks pay anywhere between 0.25 and maybe 0.5 on your money in your checking account that you can tie to it. Some credit cards now are offering CD rates. Can you live with the virtual bank though? Because you can't go down to the corner. There's your bank, whether it's Wells Fargo, Chase, or some other bank like that. You can't see it. It's virtual. Are you okay with that? Could Discover be your new bank? Well, they offer rates that are a little bit more competitive than most of the banks. But again, it's virtual and you can't walk inside. You have to determine your psychological profile here. Can you live without that? And then the last thing I want to talk about is you need to look at your regular rules and money markets. You know, if you're in a money market, That's really an account that could be tied to securities. And remember, if you're tied to securities, you're tied to the market. If you're tied to the market, then you're opening yourself up for risk. Even though the risk is very, very low on money market accounts, it's still a risk that you need to think about. And so when you're thinking about banking, use it for your good. Use it for the ways that you do business every month, and you'll see it'll be your servant, and you'll be able to use your money wisely. Don't forget to watch our next segment on the convenience and cautions of credit. Part 2 in our series on It's Your Money, It's Your Life. And keep in mind, before moving forward with any of the ideas on the show, always check with your tax consultant, legal counsel, or financial advisor. You've been watching Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game.